Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'd like to introduce to you our speaker. Jenn Greacen is the Executive Director and Lead Strategist at Red Frog, a full-service marketing communications firm in Florida. She speaks from her extensive background in product evolution, rebranding, and full-service marketing management. She's led the team at Red Frog to victory as a National Bronze Medal winner in the prestigious Telly Awards for promotional video development. Was also named one of the most powerful women in business by Tampa-based CEO magazine, and most recently in 2009, she celebrated as Red Frog's Tacoma Gold Addy in Interactive Media. Her topic today is Ask Why, Not How, a simple yet essential concept in planning for a successful marketing campaign. And with that, I'd like to introduce to you Jenn Greacen. Let's go ahead and start.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining me today. I wish that I could see all of your faces. This is the first time I've given a webinar of this type, so it's going to be interesting. I've spoken in front of crowds, but never over the phone, if you will, like this. So I want to start off and give you a little bit of background on where this philosophy that we're going to talk about today comes from and where I come from. After college, I worked in media sales, and I sold those ads every day. And I had to get out there and figure out how to convince the guy behind the counter, if you will, that this ad was a good thing for them. And I couldn't sleep at night, honestly, because I realized at a very virgin level before I actually had this official Ask Why Not How aha moment that I was just selling an ad to a guy who didn't need that ad. He needed customer service or a better product or a better location. So in 2003, I left the world of media sales, and I went off on my own, and I founded Red Frog. But for those first few years, while it was profitable, it was, quite frankly, way more stress than it was money. And I still had those sleepless nights, and I realized I had gotten away from the why. I was so focused on the how for my clients, which I realize now, how to spend their budgets, how to make the campaign happen, how to deliver. A client would call and say they needed something, and I would jump to give it to them because that's what they asked for, and that's what I was supposed to do, serve my clients. Now, fast forward to the past 3 years or so, since truly adopting this Ask Why Not How mentality, the firm has reached this place of harmony, and we're so much happier in realizing that the why matters for our clients. It matters for results. And ultimately, I'm happier, my staff is happier, because our clients are happier. And we're much more in control of the work we perform on a day-to-day basis because of this philosophy. So with that said, let's jump into what Ask Why Not How is and where it came from. The philosophy actually occurred to me when I was with a client one day about 3 years ago. The client was a financial investment and services firm. They had about 5 mid-size offices from Florida, coast to coast. And we were challenged to roll out a business division from their consumer branch. Spin off of the existing brand, create some different services packages, of course, advertising to launch. And I sat at this massive board table with the senior members of the steering committee, and I listened to all their ideas about how this should roll out. And frankly, they were boring to me. They were very traditional. They were very expected, very production-like in nature. And if any of you have checked out who Red Frog is and what we're all about, we're very non-traditional. We do some really crazy stuff. So after going around this room and listening to all these ideas, I had the floor to offer feedback. And I come out with some abundant creative concept of which, honestly, I can't even remember today. But I'm sure it was emotional and off the cuff and just a really cool idea at the time. And everyone in the room, most of the people in the room, we'll give it that, oohed and awed a bit. And then the key principal turns to me and he says, "Why?" And I probably answered something like, well, it'll get you a lot of visibility and you'll have the direct tracking mechanisms in place and blah, blah, blah. And again, I can't remember this earth-shattering idea or my answer to his why question, honestly. But I do remember his response to me after that why, which was, are you sure that this is the quickest and best way from point A to point B? And ever since then, I've transformed this agency quite successfully on this principle solely. Ask why, not how. And it's become a very, very powerful tool, if not the most annoying mantra in my business and even my home life. If you could ask my employees or even my husband how often I say this in a day, they'd tell you, probably 50 each and every day. So seriously, and to help you open up your mind here before we dig in and just get to the vast amount of information that I have to try to share for you here in a short amount of time, some ideas for you to kind of think about, or some situations that you might actually have in your day-to-day lives that will help you to apply this principle so that you can understand the things I'm talking about here today. Let's say you're a director yourself, and a new creative talent's resume shows up on your desk, and you just love to tap him. So you start running numbers in your head, how to fit him in, what schedule you could manipulate for him, maybe even where his desk would go. You've got this guy right there, his resume's on your desk, you want him. Stop. Ask why, not how. Let's say you're a media buyer, and a media company is throwing a one-day sale, and you just want to get in and take advantage of those rates, so you ask for budget permissions. Stop. Ask why, not how. A client calls you, the account executives out there, and they say, I've got a great idea. I'm going to make some modifications to my logo, but it's like the 18th time this year that he's called and wants to do that. All of these situations, stop. Ask why, not how. All right, so now let's talk about what why and how means. If I could ask for a show of hands, and I asked you all to tell me how many of you think you're smart, I'm sure most of you, I would hope, would raise your hands. And if I asked you how many of you think that you're creative, even the account people or the principals out there, I would hope most of you in this industry would raise your hand. And the problem is we get caught up so many times in this illusion, or maybe I should say disillusion, of our industry, of what creative is and what the smart creative really is, that we forget what the clients really care about. And all too often we think that we're creative gifts from the heavens. And I agree, most of us are pretty damn awesome, but at the end of the day, I'm sure you've all seen this, and we have to remember that our client cares more about their bottom line than he cares about your Addy. So as we move forward, we're not going to talk about being smart or being creative. We're going to talk about how to produce smart creative. So for the purposes of this concept, remember, smart equals the why, and creative equals the how. All right, asking why, not how, is the process first of analyzing the client's primary, secondary, and tertiary goals. All right, that is to say, what is the client really looking for at the heart of it all? What is the most important thing? And you need to know that versus, what's primary in line versus what's third in line, because having that in priority order helps you to really understand what it is that you are going to need to deliver for your clients. And I suggest that you do this, you go through this process of analyzing your clients' goals with your clients. Don't just make assumptions based on some things that you've heard them say. Sit down with your clients and review these goals, because then not only are you going to know the truth, but they're going to own it. And it's going to be easier to hold them to it when they are analyzing your performance later on. The second thing that you need to do in the Ask Why Not How process is analyze the client's current need state. What do they really need right now at the core of it? Usually, unless you're dealing with a massive international corporation, Fortune 500 company, it's quite frankly to get the phone to ring or put butts in seats. And consider this seriously, because it's very, very easy to get up on a tangent in our industries of branding or visibility that is unmeasurable. It delivers no ROI. And not to say those things aren't needed. Yes, of course, it's needed. But can it be achieved while putting butts in seats? Absolutely. In almost every incident for the types of clients that most of us deal with, it can. Asking why, not how is the process of developing actions that directly touch back to that point at each stage. I suggest that everybody somewhat draw this type of a graph for yourself, for your clients. Maybe you won't have the little tadpole there in the egg, but, like we do. But, you know, put the client's goal at the center of it all. That's the nucleus. It's the core foundation of the client's goal. What is their mission? What is their product positioning? Who is their target market? And what is their client? What is their end users' need states? You know, things that are typically going to be in a brand manifesto that you might write. And all these little actions that will spin off from the goal, those are things that you will do in order to directly achieve the goal. And we call that the sweet spot of the why here at Red Frog. And there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. When your actions, or the things that you are going to do to execute to achieve your client's goals, can directly relate back to the goal, that's the right way. When you have to start creating actions that need other actions that create new goals and spin off in their own different directions, you're probably being a lot more creative than you are a real problem solver. You're probably just coming up with some great ideas that you really want to execute because it'll look cool in your portfolio, and you're probably not really delivering what the client is going to need. And it will turn around to bite you later. All right, so let's apply this to a real life situation that you may encounter. Let's say that a prospect or a client calls you, and this applies to prospects as well, because if you get them on this philosophy from the very beginning, you're going to find that you're going to solve a lot of problems for yourself in that client relationship as you move forward, and you're probably going to take on more of the right kind of clients for your own business and your core competencies than you have been. So let's say this prospect or this client calls you, and they say, I want to do a direct mail, or let's go ahead and increase our radio buy for the next 3 months by $50,000. Or I think we need to revisit that website again. And you know, that's probably one of my favorites. Or I want to see a gorilla in my ad because gorillas get attention. You guys, all of you know what I'm talking about. Everybody's a creative out there, right? Everybody's got a creative idea. Or let's go ahead and sprinkle in some Christmas trees or something and give it a holiday feel. I'm not kidding. This actually happened to me recently. And this is a sign of the times, and it's my personal favorite for the past year. I heard social media is hot. Let's make some viral videos and get them out there. Stop. Ask why, not how. Don't be afraid to ask why. Many of us fear this with clients because we don't like to question authority. We don't want to question the people that are writing us a paycheck. But we have to remember that this is what they pay us for. And if you have a client that doesn't feel this way, then you have to stop yourself and decide if you're in business to produce on a production level as an order taker, or are you in business to create real solutions. And with that said, there is nothing wrong with being in business on a production level, okay? There really are many businesses that we use them every day that serve a legitimate need, but oftentimes I find that we stop being marketing companies if that's who we want to be, and we get caught up with our clients in this scenario. And it's essential for you to know who you are and who you aren't as an agency and your philosophy about service and solutions, because you can't flip-flop and be one way one day and another way another day. It doesn't work for the client, and it won't work within your organization. It's just too inconsistent. And what is it that your client expects from you? Because if you're an order taker, or as we'll go on further, I call it the how master for them, and they really want a keeper of the why, then you're going to disappoint them anyways, and it's just going to be a negative attempt when you really just wanted to keep them happy. The client is not always right, or they wouldn't need you. All right? We need to help them, guide them, and teach them, help them break down the goal, break down the ROI. Clients will ask for everything that I just listed, the funny, the not so funny, and thousands of other things more. I find it helpful to simply listen. So when we get into this situation, what I will do with the client is I will let them speak. They want to be heard. They want to be a part of the process. And after I let them speak, I'll say, you know, that's a great idea. Now, let's recap on a few things. Your goals right now are to do X, Y, Z, right? And remember, we know their goals because we had that conversation with them and we allowed them to be a part of that process. All right? Then we say, okay, all right, client, so your goals are these things, and we're currently executing to achieve these goals through X, Y, Z, and recap whatever that is in their plan. And then ask them the question. Put them in the hot seat. Say, do you see this idea that you've just brought to me, this thing that you want to do, directly achieving this goal, the goal you've identified? Or do you see it creating a new goal? You know, where does it fit in with the strategy? Does it conflict with something else? Because if it doesn't align with any of the other goals already in place, ask them if this is a goal that existed before they came up with the idea, or is this a goal that was formed around a great idea? And it's okay to ask this question. That's your job, to help them stay on course. If they created a goal around an idea, it's your job to point that out. And doing the evaluation in this way will allow your client to be a part of the process of figuring out the why versus the how. It makes them feel more in control without really being in control. Because, you know, when they're able to work things through with you rather than just you sitting there and saying no, they'll start to resent you if you just sit there and do that all the time. Because they'll start to think that you're a control freak. They'll start to think that, you know, you always think your ideas are best. Or if you sit there and you become the yes man and you execute because, hey, the client wanted to do it, you will eventually be fired because they're going to go back at some point, right? And they're going to evaluate their campaign successes to find many, many failures. And even if they weren't your idea, they were theirs, you're still going to get the boot. Trust me, it happens. So what is this going to do for you when you ask why, not how? First of all, you're going to reduce schizophrenia. I call it brand schizophrenia. It's a loss of identity. Companies get so easily embedded in great ideas that they forget the fact that they run campaigns that don't align with their goals or even their target market. It happens all the time because great hows don't align with the why. They allow the vision of a great how sway them, and they forget this isn't who they service or how they service them. It's no fun for you as the agency either because it causes massive disorganization in the campaigns and projects that you'll try to manage. And you all know what I'm talking about. When the client has this idea, it has nothing to do with anything that you're doing, and then you have to scramble to figure out how to fit this thing in. Don't do it. The other thing it's going to do is it's going to help you and your clients maintain structural order. Many times clients will have ideas they think are great, they bring them to the table, you help them execute it, but their internal organizations are not set up to execute this idea. Maybe it's a special holiday promotion, or they had this great idea for a spin-off product, but their customer service department isn't properly formed or informed in how to manage that new product spin-off. I call this the running of the bulls in the brand world. And it just absolutely creates chaos. And it's going to create chaos in your organization, too, because if your account executives or your creatives aren't prepared to properly manage what's going on there because all of a sudden the client decided to take the campaign in a completely different direction, it's going to send all of you guys spinning. The balls are going to drop, and you're still going to get blamed for it. So doing this will really help to prevent all of that from occurring and keep everybody employed and keep the clients happy. There you go. That's simple. That guy's going to make you smile probably, and you'll stay employed. So if any of you guys look like that right now, then good for you. Okay, so inside of your own organization, you have the keepers of the why versus the masters of the how, and you heard me talk about these just a few minutes ago. The keeper of the why is typically your account executive, or it should be. The master of the how is inevitably going to be your art department. And you need to be ready to combat or if you're a principal or a director, work with these two different departments to help them find some commonalities for your clients. I find that it's best to have the strategy and the campaign brief review at the beginning of a creative meeting or a brainstorm, and present that creative brief and make sure that the creative brief and the final execution presentation is a continuation of the client's goals and the strategies. And, of course, align in time with the elements of the promotional overview that you might have in place for your clients. And if you don't do these things, by the way, that would probably be a whole other webinar, but you should definitely always make sure that you at least have those brand manifestos or those campaign briefs in order so that everybody can be on the same page as to what the client's goals are before you begin a brainstorm. All right, so let's take that through what that brainstorm process might look like. A great way to keep the how and why in check with your own internal culture is just simply to ensure that all parties sit down together in the brainstorm. Everybody that's a part of the process needs to come together from the very beginning. And again, you start very simply with this brief, an outline that puts out all the goals. We use a big whiteboard in our conference room. Everybody gets together, and we just allow the ideas to flow. You can start off by just simply saying, okay, this is the goal, and the client's got a $75,000 restriction, and they're ultimately wanting to bring in the traffic and to increase their brand consistency. Okay, so you can even cover those up once you've identified the goals, because I find sometimes it stops the creative process from flowing. But just let the ideas come out. You know, no idea is a bad idea. No idea should be rejected. Let it flow, okay? But the goal is there. It's in place, all right? Now what you do once you've blasted out all these great ideas is you go back, you uncover the goal again, and you remove all the things that don't directly align back to that goal. Remember the slide that showed the little tadpole and the egg and how everything has to directly align back to the goal? This is basically just going through and doing the same process. So the client's goal was, you know, $75,000 worth of budget to bring in traffic and increase brand consistency. And as you can see, we decided a midget dance troupe, probably not the best way to do that. But the networking event, the ad, the PURL mailings, you know, the social networking sites, maybe those all did the trick. So, you know, I want to say something else about this. The great part of doing this internally within your culture, you get more ideas out of folks when you don't make them think within borders. And yet you're easily able to remove ideas that are truly bad or don't directly align without any hard feelings. And the reality of it is that as creatives, we all have these tiny little egos, and we don't like to be told no or that our ideas suck. So this helps to take the emotion out of things and keep it non-political and non-opinionated. It will keep your total team working together well and everyone wanting to bring the heat to the table rather than feeling that their ideas are always shut down, which can happen when they don't really understand why they're being shut down. So this brings that sense of understanding and yet still helps you to make sure that you're not executing creative that you didn't really want to execute either for the client or for your own internal creatives because, gosh, you know, they had this great idea and they really want to execute it. It helps you to put the kibosh on that, make sure that that doesn't go on inside of your organization. And so what do you do with those great ideas that don't get used? It's okay to table them. It's okay to put them aside. I say reduce, reuse, recycle, because it's those of us who can harness great ideas, hold them back when they aren't relative to delivering results, take a step back, focus on the goals of the client or the campaign, and keep them for later. We actually keep an idea box here at the agency. We pull out these ideas oftentimes in a brainstorm session. We use them as a creative tool. They have their place. They may have a time someday that they're able to be executed. They just may not be best suited in our client's portfolio or to achieve a client's goal today. So with that, that's a very quick overview of what the Ask Why Not How philosophy is, and I made it through quicker than I thought I would. So I'd like to open up the floor now if anybody has any questions and wants to hear anything about specific incidents that you might be dealing with in this situation right now with your clients.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jen, for the very informative, very insightful presentation today. As Jen mentioned, if you have questions about today's presentation, any situations that you have going on in your office at this time or with your clients that you're dealing with and you'd like her advice, use that question and answer panel or question panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and we can address those to Jen. So I see a couple coming in. Jen, maybe I'll just start off by asking one here about some of the challenges that you're currently facing in today's economy, sort of with what's been happening in the industry and how that's affected clients or working with clients and business at this point in time.
Well, that's actually, there's two parts to my answer there. One, related to the economy. I find that clients are pulling out at about 35% capacity. So they come in, they get motivated, they have the big ideas, we narrow them down, we get down to the why, and then we want to move on and start executing. And they love it, and then they get scared, and they pull out. And so you never really are able to deliver that end result. So that's the first thing I think that relates to the economy. As far as the sign of the times, like I said before, I think that the biggest thing that I hear right now is clients calling or prospects calling, and everybody and their mother wants some sort of what they're calling a social media campaign, and everybody thinks it's about Facebook. And so I think, when I get these calls and people say, I really want to do social media, I want to get some videos up on YouTube or Facebook, my head just starts to spin because they just know that this is a big buzzword. They see a lot of folks doing it out there. They don't really think about how it relates to their organization or what the end result is going to be, and they just want to start throwing stuff out there to see what's going to stick. And they're really hard to harness and pull back in and make sure that they know what they're doing and they're asking why before they're figuring out the how.
That's great. Thank you. So I've got one here from April. I'm just going to summarize. She's got a client who's wanting to do an event involving midgets. Hang on a second here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, April. Looks like I was trying to be serious here. So I'm going to disregard that question. But I do have another question. If you can illustrate, Jen, maybe just some examples of things that you come across on a regular basis that clients can learn from.
I'm sorry, can you ask that again?
Sure. Things that you come across sort of in your experience in doing the sort of ask why, not how, that you see on a regular basis that the listeners today can take away with some specific examples of tips that you see repeatedly happening over and over again.
Again, it's the classic. It's the client calls and says, just last week, the client that calls and says, hey, I really need to see some movement in my sales next month. So let's go ahead and throw another $50,000 out there into media buys. And that's just dangerous. And if you can't stop and say, whoa, wait a minute, let's ask why here. Why are we just going to start throwing some money out there to see what's going to stick? Throwing out additional money doesn't necessarily mean an increased return. Where is that breaking point in the ROI? Where is it that you're going to hit an even point no matter how much you put out there? Let's really sit down and evaluate what's going on here, and let's figure out what the best strategy is going to be in order to achieve your goal. Let's not just do this and just throw this out there and sit back and cross our fingers and hope.
Great. Okay. Thank you. And maybe just also another question just in regards to some of the campaign briefs that you get from your clients. You've outlined the goals with them. You understand the path that you're going on. You come with your team and you sort of come up with those brainstorming ideas. You've got some great things. You present that to your client. They're on strategy, but the client really doesn't see that. You've presented in sort of all the way that you can. How do you move from taking sort of a great idea, which you know will be on strategy, which you know will ultimately achieve their goal, but ultimately they don't see that and they don't believe in that? Well, where do you move from there?
That's a great question. That happens all the time. If you can show the client, look, this directly relates back to your goal, and you outline in their creative brief, what we do, we actually write out the strategy. I mean, we write it out in paragraph form, write it very conversationally in tone, And then we put at the end of the campaign briefs all the elements that will be needed to actually execute that campaign, along with whatever it's going to take out of their budget. If you go through that with your clients and they don't get it, they're not seeing that aha moment, and they come back and they say, okay, well, that's great, and it's very creative, and yeah, I see how it can relate directly back to the goal, what you really end up there in is a sales issue. You really end up in a position where you are going to end up having to resell yourself or resell your firm. Because if you have clients that you're presenting these strategies to and they make total sense, and you even show them what maybe they brought to the table versus what you brought to the table, and you do a diagram. I mean, I find that being visual is very helpful with clients to draw like that, those two examples where we had the right way and the wrong way, and show them, okay, this is your idea, and these are your goals, and your idea doesn't directly relate with the goals, but here's ours, and it does, and here is what this is going to cost you versus this is going to cost you, and this is the expected ROI on both. If you go through all that and the client still says, yeah, that's great, but let's do it my way, either you've got a really controlling client on your hands, which is a whole other issue and a whole other webinar, or you have not sold your idea well. People that they don't believe in you. Maybe it's you. Maybe they don't believe in you. And so I think that what you have to do then is make some serious decisions. But at the end of the day, at least you've, and pardon the term, but you've covered your ass a little bit, because you've presented it to them in every way possible, and you better be sure as a marketing company that no matter what you end up doing, you put in place some sort of a tracking mechanism, not just for your client, but for yourself. Because when your account comes up under review, and it will, you can go through all of those examples of the things that you've done and the work that you've executed for your client, and you'll be able to, they'll know which ones were theirs and which ones were yours, and you can show truly measurable results. And in time, in doing that, if you keep the account after that review, the client will start to grow their trust with you more and more. And if they don't, they just may be the wrong client too. You might just have that really controlling client on your hands that's never going to let you do anything and isn't ever going to trust you. Those people exist.
Great, thank you. That was a great answer. I've got a follow-up question to that. So in terms of meeting with your clients, how often would you recommend meeting with your clients to sort of ensure their goals are on target, and what would be your process in doing so?
That's a good question too. Our agent, when we're AOR for a client, we're an agency of record, we will meet with the clients a minimum of once a month. And I prefer this to be in face. I don't like to do it over conference calls because you really get a response, kind of like the webinar today, you really get a better response by being able to see somebody's face. But if that's not possible, then absolutely by conference call. I wouldn't ever go more than 60 days without having FaceTime with your client, no matter where they are. If you took on a client in Japan, you better be prepared to fly to Japan every 60 days to meet with that client, in my opinion. The space between those meetings could also be as often as every 2 weeks. Some of our larger accounts, the ones that are really, really doing a lot of volume, like in, for instance, automotive, where you're just constantly changing things out and doing different things, I like to meet every 2 weeks. And the process that we go through here is we actually use something here called a promotional overview. It's a timeline of sorts that shows the client month by month and department by department what marketing they have going on out there. And we take that to the client, and we use that as a starting point. Okay, this is where you're at. Here are the strategies or the briefs that are on the table. This is where we'd like you to be. And we highlight those items in red. And we say, okay, so what are we going to execute on? And let's start this meeting by revisiting the goal. These are the things we're doing right now that are achieving the goal, and these are the new goals that have been identified, and these are the things that we'd like to do, commence discussion.
Great. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap with that question. I'd like to be mindful of time. So thank you, everyone, for taking the time out of your busy day for today's webinar. And the recording of this webinar will be available for viewing or re-listening to at functionfox.com/events. It's also the place where you can look at our past webinars and any upcoming webinars, so I'd recommend that. And then Jenn, obviously, as well, you can access her site, Red Frog, and if you have any additional questions, please send them either to us or to Jenn, and we'd be happy to answer those for you. Thanks very much, Jenn, for being our presenter today. I think you did an amazing job, and we look forward to everyone attending our next webinar.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.